Girlfriend cheated on me in the worst way with my son. Guy I feel so low about now. However, my 37 male, GF, .5, of 3 years cheated on me with my son, 20 male. It's finished between me and her. I'm working on a method to express to her how upset she's made me feel and what she's done to me before we break contact permanently. It hurts so terribly since I've been alone for years, since my wife died when I was very young, and she's the only person I've allowed and enough to be in a relationship with. But I guess I was naive enough to assume someone that young would genuinely be interested in me. So I let down my guard and allowed the wrong person in. I didn't even think about the age, just the person. I'm not sure I'm feeling bad enough for it. If that's who I end up with, maybe I deserve to be alone. I'll never again put my confidence in anybody. My son, on the other hand, is the one who pains me the most. As a young father and a single father from the age of 22, I've done my best to offer him the greatest life possible. It hasn't been easy, but up till now, I wouldn't exchange it for anything. But, my goodness, I feel so deceived by him. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. He's my kid and I adore him, but I don't see how I or he can make this right. All of my respect is gone. I no longer have faith in him. I realize it's a messed up scenario, so maybe advise isn't the right term. Maybe support is. Thank you very much. Change, change, change. So I've made 2 major choices today. I messaged my ex and told her I wanted to meet with her to speak. I'm not coming back to her. However, I want to meet her face to face, look her in the eyes, and tell her how deeply she wounded me and that I don't want any further contact. I may even abandon the proposal I was planning to make next year before all of this occurred. It isn't for her, it is for me. And in terms of my son, I've decided that I want to sit with him and force him to confront my parents, tell them what he's done and why he's remaining there, and see the disappointment in their eyes. They're really close, and I want him to understand the repercussions of his actions. If he accomplishes that, there's a possibility we'll start talking again. Story 2. I, 28 male, struggle with my relationship, 27 female. It's been 7 months, and it's by far the most difficult relationship I've ever had, which is why I'm telling my tale here. I'm at a loss for what to do, and I'm afraid I'll be a terrible spouse. That is to say, we fight all the time, and any little incident might escalate into a major crisis. For background, I'm French, she's Korean, and we reside in Korea. We have many cultural differences, which is okay, but it does come in the way, even though I believe it is more of a personality problem than a cultural one. The main problem, in my opinion, is spending time together. She wants to do everything with you all of the time. While I like spending time with her, I'm also pretty independent and enjoy doing things on my own or seeing friends on occasion. But it became very complex. If I tell her I have stuff to do, she gets angry and tells me how much I don't love her and what a lousy boyfriend I am. As a result, I sacrificed more of my time to make it up and began seeing fewer friends. I need to ask her whether it's okay if I go out with pals. I've never had to do that before, but maybe it's because of the cultural differences, right? That's what I assumed. Even when I'm with friends, she wants me to respond to her messages, which she sends often, and to contact her. I simply can't enjoy my time with my friends like that and don't want to be disrespectful to them by texting all the time when we hang out. So it created a lot of conflicts with my girlfriend as well. The typical "I'm such a poor boyfriend, every Korean does this, it's a normal thing" to her. She uses this argument often and makes me feel like a jerk every time. But I eat it up because I adore her and am extremely pleased with her when everything is okay. When I need to study or work, the scenario is identical. She expects me to think of her as my first and only priority. Here comes the second major concern. She enjoys drinking booze. I like drinking, but I'm not a huge drinker. She is, though, in a way. She enjoys drinking with me, which I do as well. But the problem is that when I fall asleep or don't want to drink more with her because I believe I've had enough, she becomes enraged and tells me how awful of a lover I am again, allowing her to drink alone after that. This resulted in several clashes. I don't always want to drink, but I do it because I want to spend time with her. But now comes the terrifying part. We get home one night after having a drink with some of her friends, and she wants to drink more, just the 2 of us. I had too much, so I told her I was okay, knowing she'd be unhappy, but there was no other option. She gets angry at me and keeps saying the same things, which irritates me, so I ordered her to simply drink and leave me alone. I then retired to bed, and a few minutes later she enters the room with a large knife from the kitchen, cutting through the blankets and telling me to get up while threatening me with it. I'm stunned but inebriated, so I grab her arm and pull her arm away from her, forcing her to drop the knife. Before shutting the bedroom door, I hit and hurl it in the living room. We then fought a lot, and I told her that this was too much for her, and that I was going to break up with her. She apologized 1,000 times the following day, sobbed, and I ended up forgiving her. Despite everything, I adore her. When we don't quarrel, she is incredibly sweet and compassionate. Despite the fact that it made me believe I don't know what she's capable of, I'd never been afraid by someone I loved before. She never did anything insane like that again, but we've been fighting more and more in the past month for similar reasons, and I'm starting to feel like I can't breathe. She demands too lot from me and refuses to give me any space. But I love her so much that it's difficult for me to make up my mind and imagine life without her. I also don't have anybody else here since I'm in a different nation. Sometimes I believe she is correct. I'd a lousy partner who has to strive harder. I'm not flawless either. When we quarrel, I avoid her for a few hours because I don't want to face her, which she despises. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? Story 3. My 23 female, boyfriend, 35 male, treats me like when he's drunk, but I'm struggling to leave. My boyfriend and I began as co-workers who were casually sleeping together. I certainly developed emotions for him much sooner than he did, and even though he ultimately said he loved me and wanted to be exclusive with me while he was intoxicated, it took him a few months to really start behaving like we were genuinely together when he was sober. I won't go into too much detail about all the major fights/arguments we've had in the nearly 18 months since we first started sleeping together, but I will say that the majority of them have occurred because he was drunk or because he refused to accept responsibility for anything he said or did while drunk the next day. When he drinks, it's as if he transforms into a completely different person, and if we're out drinking together, I can tell as soon as he reaches the point of being blackout drunk, and it immediately makes me feel anxious because I know I'm in for a night of walking on eggshells trying not to irritate him. I'll be doing nothing and he'll start calling me every name in the book and telling me I've done something but never telling me what. Most nights when he's like that, I simply have to look away and attempt to sleep as he sleeps next to me, calling me and saying awful things in general. I've had to leave for work early the following morning on several occasions, just to get a text from him later in the day, when he finally wakes up, saying sorry if I was nasty last night. He usually tells me not to hold on to anything he says when he's drunk because he doesn't mean it, but it's gotten to the point where it's really impacting me psychologically now, particularly because he refuses to allow me speak to him about how it makes me feel. What's worse is that he knows how much it bothers me and hasn't done anything to modify his behavior. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to fully abstain from drinking, but I feel like we can't even go out for 1 or 2 drinks without him being drunk and behaving like a jerk. We were locked in a pattern of fighting while both of us were drunk because of the things he'd say, him apologizing the following day, and me letting it go. Part of me, honestly, thought that was all right because people do occasionally say foolish things they don't mean when they're drunk, and he made me feel like I was being unjust holding that stuff against him when he was sober. However, it seems that same element of him is infiltrating his sober life as well. He's beginning to become pretty controlling and manipulative, particularly with regard to some of my friends, whom he also knows but dislikes. For example, he seldom takes me on dates or arranges for us to do anything other than drink at the bar as a pair, so I've recently asked him if we may go to a Christmas market one weekend. He shut me down, saying angrily that he expected I'd be going with my friends since I often do things with them without first asking him whether he wanted to do it with me. It honestly seemed as if he was proposing that if they ever asked me to go somewhere, I should first make sure it wasn't something he wanted to do before I went with them instead. I told him he was being stupid and that I was asking him about them to go to the market. I had a pretty significant test in the morning that I had spent months preparing for, so I asked him if we could do something modest to celebrate it being done in the evening, like maybe go for 1 or 2 drinks and then grab lunch, etc. He was dismissive at first, saying just, "We'll see." I texted him later in the day to see if he was still interested, and he said maybe tomorrow, since he had to get up early for work, which is never a problem when he wants to remain at the bar all evening, and added I can't today, but I'm sure you can wait a day. I told him that was okay, but I couldn't do it the following day, so maybe another day, and he didn't respond. 2 hours later, he inquired as to where I intended to go for. I hadn't been ignoring him on purpose, but I had been online at the time since I was chatting to another buddy on WhatsApp. I responded for him 40 minutes later and made a few recommendations, assuming he planned to go there another day. He then accused me of neglecting him since he saw I was online. He then accused me of going to one of the venues I named with my pals that night since he had said no. I told him I hadn't and that I'd asked him to accompany me, and he began blaming me for not being able to celebrate with him later that night since it took me 40 minutes to respond, and by that time it was supposedly too late for him to come out. I don't see how it would have been an issue if I had asked my pals after he had said no, and that it was suddenly my fault that he didn't arrive, despite having informed me earlier in the day that he couldn't. That behavior, together with how he treats me while he's intoxicated, has convinced me that I must go. Breaking up with someone has always been my worst concern, and I'm terrified of hurting him since, no matter how he treats me, I still love and care about him a lot. I believe he has a lot of his own problems, and I don't think he was ready for a new relationship when we began dating. Him and his fiancée had just broken up about 10 months before we met. I want him to be okay, but I can't keep being his emotional punching bag. We both just began the same job and work in adjacent locations, so we're certain to run into one another, plus we share a lot of the same social circles, so I don't want things to finish in a sour manner, like in the midst of an argument. I'd want to attempt to talk to him about it all, but I'm not sure where to begin, how to approach it, or when to bring it up. Keeping in mind that he despises talking about things, particularly when he believes he is in the wrong. How can I even begin to have this conversation with him about everything?